I am 29. For 3 years, we fit into each other's lives with the quiet rhythm of people who have learned one another's small habits. We kept things practical. The cracks started small. It was never one huge betrayal at first. It was the little shifts that added up. She began to treat my stress like an inconvenience. Bills, family calls, the nights I couldn't sleep. All the things that used to find a place in her empathy were suddenly mine to handle alone. When I brought things up, she would say, "Look, you have to get a grip. Your problems are your mess. Don't expect me to carry them." She said it like handing back an unpaid bill, like it was a settled policy. I remember the casual way she said it, as if we were discussing groceries. I smiled and said, "Understood." Saying that felt like folding up a map and putting it away. I wanted to be the steady one, the person who doesn't make noise when things are hard. I told myself the relationship needed boundaries. I told myself I wasn't asking too much. So I began carrying my own mess the way she asked. Quiet, efficient, without interrupting her evening routines or her weekend plans. There's a difference between stepping up and stepping away. I stepped up. I kept my side of the rent. I handled calls to her family when she didn't want to, and I held my temper on days when everything went wrong. I didn't nag. I didn't dramatize. I kept to the promise I made with that small answer. Understood. Even so, she kept the distance. She stopped sharing details that mattered, the ones that reveal a person, a fear, an embarrassment, an awkward conversation at work. She would text, short and clipped, as if our shared life had been trimmed down to efficient bullet points. When she laughed, it felt rehearsed. When she asked about my day, it was a habit, not curiosity. I started noticing other changes around us, too. Small purchases she hadn't mentioned. Plans she had that didn't include me. The way she would suddenly have to run out when I knew she was just a few blocks away. None of these on their own proved anything. Together they formed a pattern that kept nudging at the edge of my calm. One Thursday evening, she came home later than usual. Her hair was wet from rain, her coat zipped up high, and I made coffee. She accepted it, took a slow sip, then said the line again, as if reminding me of a boundary she owned. "Your problems are your mess. Don't expect me to carry them." This time, there was something else in her voice, satisfaction, maybe, like she felt right about drawing the line where I had once thought we walked together. I could have pushed. I could have argued and demanded warmth and explanation. Instead, I noticed the way the light hit the kitchen tiles, the unchanged plants in the window. I let my answer be small and final. "Understood," I said and meant it. I went to sleep that night thinking about all the times people ask you to be who they need without returning the favor. I thought about how often you hand over pieces of yourself and never get them back. There are moments when people sharpen politeness into armor and expect the world to accept the damage it causes. The week after, nothing dramatic happened at first. I kept my head down, worked late, fixed what needed fixing, and pretended everything was ordinary. But underneath, I had a quiet plan. Not a scheme to humiliate, not a public show, just a steady withdrawal of the things I had been giving that were taken for granted. I started with small things she wouldn't notice at first, the easy supports I had quietly supplied. I didn't say a word. The first thing I pulled back was time. Not in a dramatic way, just the quiet hours I used to give freely. I stopped rearranging my schedule around hers. If she needed a ride, she called someone else. If she wanted help with errands, she went alone. She didn't notice at first. People rarely notice the support they've taken for granted until it's missing. She grew a little irritated one night when I didn't respond to her texts right away. I was out walking, clearing my thoughts, letting the cold air settle the noise in my head. When I returned, she sat on the couch with her arms crossed, not angry, just confused. "You always answer," she said. "I was busy," I replied, simple and calm. That was it. No argument. Just the beginning of a shift she didn't expect. The second thing I pulled back was money. Not her money, not joint accounts. I'm not the dramatic type who flips tables and drains banks. I just stopped covering the small gaps she ignored. The subscription she always forgot to cancel. The service fee showed up every few weeks. The groceries she would get next time. Next time never came. By the fourth day, she noticed the missing groceries. She stood in the kitchen, looking at the near-empty shelf, and said, "You didn't go?" "You said everything is separate," I answered. "So I figured this fits." She didn't argue. She just walked away, irritated but quiet. She had no idea this was only the first ripple. The real turning point came on the fifth day. She received a call, loud, urgent, unmistakably stressful. She shut the bedroom door, but I heard enough to understand something big was unraveling in her world. It wasn't my business anymore. She made that clear. 40 minutes later, she came out pale and shaken. She stood in the hallway for a moment, like she was debating whether to break the wall she had built between us. "I need your help with something," she said. Her voice was thin, not the confident tone she used when she told me to handle my problems alone. I was sitting at the dining table, reading. I looked up, patient, waiting for her to continue. It's complicated, she added, fidgeting with her sleeve. I really need someone. Someone. Not me. Not us. What kind of help? I asked, keeping my tone even. Not cold. Just neutral. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Can we talk in private? Private. As if the entire apartment wasn't already quiet. I stood up and faced her, giving her the space she thought she wanted. She began explaining fast, like she was trying to outrun her own fear. A situation involving a close friend of hers, some financial trouble, a mistake she'd been hiding from everyone, including me. She needed advice, support, all the things she used to push away. She finally stopped, waiting for me to step in and fix it. For a long moment, I didn't speak. Not because I wanted to make her uncomfortable, but because I remembered how she used to cut me off when I talked about my own stress. How she once waved a hand and said, "Come on, handle it. I can't carry your mess." She was waiting for that same support she denied me. "I'm sorry you're going through that," I said slowly. "It sounds difficult." Her shoulders loosened, like she thought I was about to step back into the role she was comfortable with, the quiet problem solver. "But," I added, "you told me your problems are your mess, and I should handle mine alone." I figured we're keeping that energy consistent. She blinked, stunned. "You're seriously saying that right now?" "I'm following your rules," I said. "You were very clear." She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "This is different." "It usually is," I said softly. She stared at me, finally understanding that I meant it. I wasn't climbing the wall she built just because she suddenly needed a ladder. I walked past her, calm and quiet, the same way she walked past me so many times. She didn't sleep much after that conversation. I heard her pacing in the hallway around midnight, then again at 2 in the morning. The next day, she left early, earlier than I'd ever seen her leave, almost like she wanted the world outside to fix what was falling apart inside. I kept my routine simple. Coffee, a quiet morning, a few calls, a long drive to clear my head. I wasn't celebrating her stress, but I wasn't going to break myself to carry it either. She made the rules. I was simply following them. By the afternoon, she came home again, and this time, she wasn't just stressed. She looked drained. Her eyes were red, her phone was buzzing nonstop, and she walked in as if the air inside was heavier than the air outside. She didn't say a word at first. She went straight to the couch, sat down, and pressed her palms against her face. I stayed in the kitchen, giving her the space she once claimed to want. Eventually, she looked up. "Can we talk?" she asked. The tone wasn't sharp or demanding. It was small, almost unsure. I sat across from her, not too close. She took a long breath and finally said, "Everything is falling apart. I don't know what to do." She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't exaggerating. You could see she meant it. So I let her talk. She explained the whole mess. A friend who dragged her into something she didn't fully understand, a financial commitment she made trying to help, and now that same friend had backed out and left her holding the responsibility alone. Now there were deadlines, calls, people expecting things she couldn't give. She looked at me like she expected me to jump in with solutions. Maybe she assumed my silence meant I was preparing to fix everything. Instead, I listened the way she used to listen to me, before she started treating my stress like background noise. When she finished, she leaned back and stared at the ceiling. "I know I said some things," she said quietly, "but I didn't mean them the way they sounded." I kept my voice steady. "You meant them enough to repeat them." She lowered her head. I was frustrated. "I was too," I said, "but I didn't shut you out." The room felt still. Not tense, just honest in a way we hadn't been for months. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I'm sorry. It should have felt satisfying." It didn't. It just felt late. She reached for my hand, something she hadn't done in weeks. "Please," she whispered. "I really need you right now." I gently pulled my hand away. She froze. "Please don't do this." "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm respecting what you asked for." Her eyes filled with new fear, not panic, just the realization of what the last few months truly cost her. "I didn't think you'd take it literally," she said. "You made it clear," I replied. "You said your problems are yours and mine are mine." I accepted that. "But we're supposed to be partners." I looked at her, and for a moment, I tried to remember the version of us when things felt easy. But that version didn't exist anymore. She'd broken it piece by piece while expecting me to hold the pieces together alone. "Partners carry each other," I said. "You stopped doing that long before today." She took a shaky breath and said, "Can we at least figure this out together? Just this once." "There's no just this once," I said. "This is who you wanted us to be. Separate. Independent. No shared problems. No shared support." She didn't argue. She just stared at the floor, holding her knees like she was trying not to fall apart completely. The calls kept coming. She ignored them. Her hands were shaking a little, not from fear, but from the weight of realizing she had misjudged everything. Me, herself, our whole relationship. I stood up. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice small again. "For a walk," I said. "I need some air. Will you come back?" "Yes," I answered. "But I won't be coming back to the same role you put me in." She didn't try to stop me. She just watched me leave, realizing that the quiet consequences she'd created were finally circling back. The next 2 days showed me something I had never seen from her before: silence. Not the cold, dismissive silence she used when she wanted to end a conversation, but the fragile kind, the kind that comes from someone who doesn't know where to stand anymore. She moved around the apartment like she wasn't sure she still belonged in it. She made coffee and didn't drink it. She checked her phone every few minutes, hoping for a message that might fix everything. It never came. I kept to my side of life. I wasn't rude, but I wasn't stepping in to pick up the weight she dropped either. If I passed her in the hallway, I nodded. If she spoke, I answered politely. Nothing more. On the 7th day, exactly 1 week after she told me her famous line about not carrying my problems, it all hit at once. She came home in a rush, keys jangling, breath uneven, hair a mess like she'd been running. She didn't even close the door behind her at first. She stood in the doorway, leaning on the frame with her eyes wide and unfocused. I turned from the counter. "You okay?" She stepped inside, shut the door with a shaky push, and said, "Everything just collapsed." I didn't move closer. I waited for her to explain on her own terms. She walked to the table and sat, clasping her hands like she was holding on to something that wasn't there. "It's all gone wrong," she whispered. "Everything." She wasn't exaggerating. She told me the whole story. The company she trusted for a project bailed. The person she thought would help backed out. The financial mess doubled overnight. And now she had a deadline she couldn't meet. On top of that, a misunderstanding with her family led to a harsh argument that pushed her further into isolation. All in one day. She didn't cry loudly. It wasn't a dramatic breakdown. Just small, quiet tears slipping down her face as she talked, the kind people try to wipe away before anyone notices. She looked at me through those tears. "Can you help me? Please. I don't have anyone else." Those words, "I don't have anyone else," carried more truth than she meant. When someone spends months pushing you away, they shouldn't be surprised when the distance becomes real. I sat down across from her. Not beside her, across. "I'm sorry you're dealing with all this," I said. My tone was calm, not harsh. "I really am." She nodded quickly, like she hoped that was the start of a solution. "But," I continued, "you told me very clearly that your problems are your mess." Her face fell. "Not now? Please, not now. I didn't mean it like that." "You repeated it more than once," I said. "You built that boundary, and you made sure I understood it." She reached out like she wanted to grab my hand, but stopped halfway, maybe realizing she no longer had that right. "I didn't think you'd take it seriously," she said. "That's the thing," I replied. "You didn't think about it at all. You said it because it made your life easier at the time." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I'm begging you. Don't walk away from me now." I looked at her for a moment. Not angry, not triumphant, just steady. She hadn't been my partner for months. She'd been a roommate with emotional distance and selective involvement. "I'm not walking away from you," I said. "I'm walking away from the version of me you expected, the one who carries everything alone." She bowed her head, and when she spoke again, it was barely audible. "I didn't think you'd stop loving me." "That's the thing," I said quietly. "Love needs space to stand. You took that space away." For a long moment, she just sat there, holding the truth like it was heavier than everything else going wrong. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and said, "I'm heading out for a bit." "Please," she whispered. "Please don't leave me right now." I turned back to her. "You left us long before today." Then I walked to the door. She didn't follow me. She just sat there, finally facing the consequences she thought would never reach her. When I stepped out that night, the air felt colder than usual. I walked for nearly an hour, passing familiar streets without really seeing them. I wasn't replaying old arguments or building a speech in my head. I was letting clarity settle, the kind that only arrives when you stop trying to force something to work. By the time I got back to the apartment, the lights were still on. She sat on the floor beside the couch, knees pulled to her chest, looking small in a way I hadn't seen before. Not weak, just humbled by the weight of her own choices. When she saw me, she stood quickly, wiping her face. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice wasn't sharp or defensive. It wasn't drenched in desperation either. It was tired, the kind of tired that comes when someone finally stops trying to outrun reality. I nodded and sat at the table. She sat across from me again, like earlier, except this time she didn't try to reach for my hand. "I know I pushed you away," she said slowly. "I know I stopped being here for you. And I know you're doing exactly what I told you to do, and I can't blame you for it. She took a deep breath. But I never thought you'd walk away when everything was falling apart. Her honesty wasn't manipulative. She wasn't trying to guilt me. She was just acknowledging the consequences she never expected. I leaned back in my chair. You told me not to lean on you, I said. So I stopped. But it wasn't revenge. It was respect. She nodded. I know. I didn't realize how much you carried until you stopped carrying it. She wasn't wrong. The absence of support reveals more truth than words ever do. Then she said something that stayed with me. I thought you'd keep giving no matter how little I offered back. There it was, the real problem. Not betrayal, just complacency. She had assumed I would always be the steady one, always bending to make room for her comfort. And for a long time I was. I looked at her and said, people stop giving when they feel invisible. She lowered her eyes. I made you invisible. I didn't correct her. She had finally said the truth out loud. After a long moment of silence, she whispered, is there any way we can fix this? Her words hung in the air. Hopeful, but too late. I wasn't angry. I just felt done, not dramatically, just done in a human, simple way. Like a door quietly closing after being nudged for months. I think we're past fixing, I said. Not because of today, but because of everything before today. Her eyes watered again. She didn't argue. She just sat still, trying to accept the ending she never saw coming. I understand, she finally whispered. And for the first time, she actually meant the word. We talked about practical things after that, respectfully. I told her I'd give her time to figure out where she wanted to go next. She thanked me through quiet tears. When I finally stood to leave the room, she said softly, I didn't think karma worked this fast. Karma isn't magic, I said. It's just the moment life stops protecting you from your own choices. She didn't reply. She just nodded, staring at the table like she was replaying every time she brushed off my stress, every moment she dismissed me, every chance she had to be better but chose convenience instead. I went to my room, packed a small bag, and stepped back out. She stood by the door, eyes swollen, voice barely a whisper. Will you come back? I'll come back for my things, I said. But not for us. As I walked out, she stayed in the doorway, watching in silence. It wasn't anger on her face. It was the heavy understanding that she had lost something she thought would always be there.